Good morning, everybody, and welcome. We'd like to call this Lafayette Redevelopment Commission regular meeting of June 25th, 2026 to order. Dennis, minutes? Do we have anything? Nothing from you?
Yeah,
Has
nothing from
everybody
me.
had a chance to review the minutes?
Sure, I'd move approval of the minutes of the May 28, 2026 meeting of the Lafayette Redevelopment Commission.
Have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes carry. New business, offer and consideration of written offers.
As you know, from the last meeting, we put out a public offering for some former railroad relocation, rail corridor land for the receive offers on for development. And it looks like we have not received anything for that, so.
We have nothing, Michelle? Okay. How do we proceed then, Dennis?
I don't, you need to do anything, so.
Okay, no action there.
Yeah, if we had received offers, I would advise for you to take them under advisement, but we don't have any, so.
Okay, moving
No
on.
action needed.
We have an Atlas Excavating the Park East Boulevard change order number 10.
Yes, again, this is change order number 10, and this is due to the fire department requesting that the fire hydrants not be located in the landscape mounds that are out there. So the fire hydrants have been, the landscape mounds have been shifted not to interfere with his access, and the extensions have been removed. So this change order was tracked by time and material in the amount of $47,036.73. Our previous contract, it was in the amount of $21,567,450.76. And with this change order, the new contract amount will be $21,614,491.49, and asking for your approval. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions?
No?
I'll make a motion that we accept change order number 10 from Atlas Excavating in the amount of $47,036, and I think he said 70 cents? 72
Yes,
cents?
73 cents.
73 cents.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution LRC 2026-11.
And this is a declaratory resolution of the City of Lafayette Redevelopment Commission amending the economic development plan for the consolidated Creasy Central Economic Development Area to include new projects. As you know, we've been working on the Lafayette Theater project for some time, and we also have another project with John Carone and Greg Malakis to do some townhomes in the Centennial neighborhood. So we're looking to support those projects through TIF, and so to do that, we must add them to our plan and such. So this is what this resolution is doing. But we have our bond counsel here, Dennis Otten, so I'll have him come up and explain a little more details.
Thanks, Dennis. Good morning, Commissioners. Just for the record, Dennis Otten with Bose McKinney and Evans. And if it pleases the Commission, I might kind of address our items on the agenda that are related to this declaratory resolution, if that's okay, and try to answer any questions you have. But as Dennis mentioned, the Redevelopment Commission is looking to participate in the theater project and the townhome project, and utilizing the consolidated Creasy Central TIF revenues for the funding of that. So there's a number of resolutions here we have before you for this all to kind of take effect. We've done this before with our other projects, so not something new, just a different project. It's exciting times here. So the first one is this declaratory resolution. We'll amend the plan to put the projects into it. This will go before the Plan Commission at its next meeting. Then we'll go to council, and we'll come back here to the Redevelopment Commission for a public hearing on that. So that's just to get the projects into the plan, which then is the vehicle to permit the use of the tax increment to support the payments on the obligations. I'll quickly touch on the other two resolutions and then see if there's questions. The resolution LRC 2026-12 is we call it a reimbursement resolution. And what this resolution is saying is that the city or the Redevelopment Commission may spend monies now on the theater project. And when the bonds are issued, it can then reimburse itself for those monies spent from the bond proceeds. This resolution is really required by federal tax laws. When we do these bond issues, with some exceptions, for the most part, we're always trying to do them as tax exempt for federal tax law purposes. The federal tax laws have a rule that says, hey, if you're going to spend money and then reimburse yourself, with some exceptions, you need to declare your intent to do that. And just historically, it speaks to a period of time when people were going out spending money on projects, and then years later, when the interest rates got favorable, they were reimbursing themselves with tax-exempt bonds, and the federal government didn't really like that. They thought, you know what, let's put a rule in place, so if you're going to do that, you declare your intent. So that's the purpose of this resolution. We'll put it in the transcript if the deal gets audited and there's a lot of reimbursements, we'll just present that and that'll satisfy that requirement. And then the final resolution on the theater project, and we're just asking, this last resolution, we're just introducing today. We will come back to the commission for a public hearing on this at a later meeting. But we like to get, this is a large project, a large financing, so we want to make sure you have all the information before you. We don't just present it to you when you hold the public hearing. And if you all recall, when we did the police station project, we used a redevelopment authority structure financing, a lease financing structure. We're doing the same thing here with the theater project. The redevelopment authority will own the theater. They will lease it to the redevelopment commission, who will make lease payments that will match the debt service on the bonds. Those payments will be funded from the consolidated TIF pledge, and we're amending the plan to permit that. We'll have a property tax backup on those lease payments. Do not expect to levy those. It's simply to market the bonds and get the best interest rate on them. That makes the investors feel secure. We get a better rating, better rate that saves the city money. And Greg and his team are here, can certainly speak to that, and they can speak to the numbers as well as to the dollar amounts and such. And you'll see we have two leases approved by that resolution. One is, I'll call it kind of the master lease, the financing lease with the Redevelopment Commission and the Redevelopment Authority. We have a separate lease that's between the city and the Redevelopment Authority that we're approving. This is to just temporarily lease some road assets over to the Redevelopment Authority. And this may sound a little confusing here, but when we go to the rating agencies and the bond insurers on this deal, the risk of these financings is that technically the Redevelopment Commission can't make a lease payment until there's an asset available for use. So if we just have the theater and it's being constructed or improved, it can't be occupied or used, we can't make a lease payment. So we put temporary assets in place that are usable during the construction period, and that takes care of that risk. It abates that risk that's in place, that if there's a delay in construction or something along those lines. It's become quite common and more prevalent. I've been doing this about 30 years. I've seen this in the last 10 years. There's a real focus by rating agencies on this. So we temporarily identify some roads, and you'll see those in that lease agreement. We have an exhibit, and we can tell the rating agencies that will be your leased asset. Now, rest assured, those roads are going to continue to be used like they are. They're going to be maintained by the city the same way they are. Nothing's going to change outwardly, but it'll satisfy that requirement. When the theater's completed, those roads will go back to the city's inventory. That lease will terminate, and they'll return back to your stock. And there's a good chance if you do another financing like this, we may call up Dennis and say, hey, let's put those back in temporarily. We did this recently. You might recall the John Purdue Block project. We had a similar structure, and I think we probably did the same thing on the police station. So I'm going to pause there. Greg, did you want to talk a little bit about the numbers maybe? Yeah. And then maybe we can take some questions if there are any.
Sure.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. Greg Balsano, Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors. I have Heidi here with me from our firm as well today. Just wanted to walk through quickly the preliminary set of financing schedules, what this looks like in front of you. Just a couple pages that I wanted to touch on. So starting kind of with page 2, looking at this. So we're looking at funding approximately a $19.4 million project, as you'll see there at the top of page 2. And as Dennis mentioned, what we're looking at here is a lease obligation. And part of that reason there is because there is going to be a property tax backup on these bonds for a marketable interest rate. You know, having that form of taxes behind it helps the bond rating and then thus helps the interest rate that you would receive on the obligation, which with a larger financing does mean more, you know, when you're paying less interest on a larger amount. And so looking at this here, you know, the different costs associated with this, assuming a debt service reserve, cost of issuance, purchaser's fees, different things like that, you're looking kind of at a total project cost with the financing cost of around $21.5 million or so. And you'll see that the bond issue we're showing right now is $15.5 million. Now, in your documents, you'll notice that the not to exceeds are much higher than that. And the reason for that is because in this analysis, you'll see that we have assumed there's $2 million of cash available to go towards the project from a prior bond issue, as well as potential ready grant funding. We've assumed $4 million here after talks with Dennis Carson. So the reason that that amount, that bonding amount is higher in terms of the not to exceed is in case for some reason when we get closer to issuing and closing on these bonds, that money isn't available and we have to finance more than originally planned. So that's why those not to exceeds are higher in there. Wanted to note that. And so again, the bond amount estimated right now is around $15.5 million, depending on where those final kind of cash amounts come in at. And so moving on to page 3, looking at the potential amortization, we're structuring this out with the length of the Creasy Central TIF area. And so that will expire around 2039. So that's why this bond you'll see goes out to August 1st of 2039, matching a lot of the existing debt payment maturity dates, as 2039 is the last year for the full TIF area there. So the payment on that obligation is estimated to be just above $1.6 million per year. And so you can see that in that schedule, estimated interest, principal, and total debt service. And then lastly, on the final page here, the page 4, you can see how do your TIF revenues, your estimated TIF revenues, correspond with the ongoing debt payments that you already have in place, as well as this debt obligation. So again, you can see there on the far left-hand side, TIF ranging anywhere from about $20.8 million in 2026 in the Creasy Central TIF, the consolidated TIF, ranging down to, by the end, you're at about $15.7 million. And the reason we're showing the decline there, as we'll talk about next month in your annual TIF presentation that we do, is twofold. One, part of the areas will start to expire, so they don't all have the same maturity date. So as areas fall off, that revenue will decrease. And we've also accounted for any potential future deductions that were enacted in, you know, kind of recent legislative changes that have happened. So hopefully this is kind of a more conservative estimate, you know, adding those deductions in, not necessarily accounting for new development other than what's in the ground today, again, with abatement roll-offs and things. So we hope that that's a more conservative estimate there. And you can see, you know, how's that revenue compare to our total debt obligations, including this 1.6 million I talked about. You can see that total debt answer there is about $8.2 million or so a year. Again, that will decrease over time as areas expire, as those bonds expire as well. And you can see that leaves you anywhere ranging from about $8 to $14 million a year left over for your other projects, your pay-as-you-go, your annual type of things you're paying out of the TIF. So again, leaving you over 200% coverage, anywhere from 215 or so to 240, meaning that even if your revenues were cut in half, you know, they didn't come in for whatever the reason was, you're still having enough revenue there to make these debt payments and not need to levy an extra tax. So as Dennis Otten mentioned, you know, the ability, kind of the reasonable expectation there that there's going to be enough TIF to cover and not ever need that tax rate to be put in place. So again, with that, we're happy to, you know, answer any questions you may have.
I appreciate the information that you did provide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
So as Terry just alluded to, the information that you provided, And one of your statements has to do with the idea of the recent legislation and the impact, the potential impact on revenue. And I think you've suggested already that that's been taken into consideration,
Yes, sir.
which would have been a question of mine, so I appreciate knowing that. I'm not sure I understood where this $2 million cash that you mentioned comes from, or where it's sitting, or wherever you want to say about that. I was a bit concerned about seeing $24 million in one of these resolutions, seeing $27 million in a different resolution. So we have two different numbers there, and what you already suggested that, okay, we're doing something to, the project is 19.1, all right, but we also have a 2.1 by way of the amortization schedule. So I think I'm getting to all of these dollars, right? And I don't know which question is for you, which question is for Dennis, which question is for Dennis Carson as opposed to Dennis Ottman. I don't know, y'all. It's a big project. It's a lot going on. I think for Mr. Carson, which I can wait for Dennis Carson, we can wait. But for this cash thing, I'm curious about, and as we try to just not to exceed, we're not saying anything about timeline. Ottman said something about we're not approving today, which also means why we have an August 27th or 26th date on one of the resolutions as opposed to today's date on the resolution. So it's in the future. I have it in front of me. I don't have the timetable. I don't believe I have the, do I have the timetable?
No.
I was gonna say, I don't think I saw the timetable. All right.
I didn't even rush.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay. So there's just a lot to understand, and I do understand a portion of it because of my work. I'm not sure the average person, as a resident of the community, would understand. So one of the questions I have for Mr. Carson is the idea of the vision for this $24 million and what this place becomes. Another question for Mr. Carson is how much have we already put into the Lafayette Theater? The thing that we have about lessee, the redevelopment authority eventually owns the building. What does that really mean? They own the building. So it's a lot. It's a lot.
You want to go first?
Yeah, to answer part of your question there.
That's okay.
Yeah, as you know, we acquired the Lafayette Theater in 2019. And,
Yes.
And we went through a process, a community-driven process, where we looked at, what's the highest and best use for the theater. And then we also did a very thorough assessment of the theater and such, and found out all the problems and all the good things about the theater as well, too, and such. And then created, a master plan to address those issues and such. And then now we've come up with this renovation plan as well. So it will be completely renovated inside and out. The outside will be a complete historic restoration of the theater, because it's in our local historic district, and it's also, we have a facade easement from Indiana Landmarks as well, too. So, and one of the questions that have come up has been the marquee, for example. That's going to be completely restored. It will have a more, kind of hard to explain exactly, but a more modern digital sign board to it for the different activities and events, but it'll still look like what it does now, where the letters hang on it and that kind of thing, but it'll actually be digital, but it will essentially look the same as it does now.
I heard somebody refer to it as photorealistic.
Yeah.
If that-
Yeah. And then the Civic Theater is going to be the resident organization for the Lafayette Theater, and then the Long Center Board is going to manage the theater. It'll seat probably about 475 people, so it'll be a relatively small theater, but it'll be there for for community use and for live performances and such and everything. So timeline, we're looking at starting the project in probably late August or early September, and be complete by about February and March of 2027.
Wow.
We have done ongoing renovations and, repair to the theater since 2019. That dollar figure, I can't tell you exactly what that is, but, we have been upkeeping it and such. But we have, for now, kind of mothballed it and such until we can start this project, because there are some issues and things right now that really doesn't lend itself to use right now. So, again, we have closed it for now until we start at the renovation. And then the one last thing, the $2 million in cash, that was from our Public Safety Center bond. That project came in under cost, so we did have some money left over from that, and we did, in the bond documents, put in there that we could use any leftover excess cash on other projects, such as the Lafayette Theater. So fortunately, we do have some cash that we can put towards the theater to get things started. With that, I'm gonna let everything else go to you guys.
Thanks, Dennis.
Okay. Mr. Holman, one thing, you mentioned the 27 figure and 24 in some documents. The 27 figure is in the amendment to the declaratory resolution, and the reason for the difference is that $3 million is allocable to that townhome project, and then the 24 million is for the theater. And you'd asked kind of about the lessor-lessee relationship and who
Yes.
owns it and everything. So right now, the theater is titled in the name of the city. So we're contemplating that before we close the bonds, they will deed that over to the Redevelopment Authority, which is basically an agency of the city. And during the term of the bonds, that will be leased to the Redevelopment Commission. When the bonds pay off, that asset will go back to the city. So it's not really going to an outside entity, it's just kind of from one department to the other. And we have to do that because Greg had mentioned that, the debt limit issues. This is what our law gives us for circumventing debt. I shouldn't say circumventing is not the right word, but it's the mechanism used to be able to issue this amount of bonds with a property tax backup and staying within the legal limits.
When we mention property tax backup, we are thinking commercial businesses, the same type of businesses who get abatements from us, right? We're not thinking local homeowners.
This is all taxable property.
All
in the
taxable
city.
prop- okay.
All taxable property.
Okay.
So, the doomsday scenario would be the TIF district burns down, downtown burns down, and there's no value there. And reinsurance hasn't built the properties back up. And so now the bondholders will go, okay, you have to levy a tax now to pay this. So you're talking just a catastrophic type event that would be the backstop. But the good news is that shouldn't happen. There's a huge mix of properties here. Sometimes that question comes up, Mr. Holman, if you put a property tax back up, what I'd call like a single site TIF, there's a little bit element of risk there. If you had like a large warehouse building that was generating all your TIF, and it burnt down, then you're like, okay, now, but, and frankly, this comes up with rating agencies and bond insurers. They'll look at sort of the portfolio of the TIF, see how diverse it is, and like, is that ever gonna come up? But, yeah, it's not just the businesses, it would be everyone.
Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, on almost all of our bonds, we have this kind of backup to obtain the most favorable rates,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, when we can legally do it, that's something, I don't know, Greg, if you
Yeah.
want to.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. More often than not, you're right. We have done some form of backing, whether it was like an income tax or property tax backup to be able to obtain a better interest rate than we would on a pure TIF bond. Pure TIF obligations just always aren't seen as the most form of, secure debt that an entity could issue. So you're going to be paying a higher interest rate on those type of obligations. And thus, if you're looking at that amortization schedule, we're showing about $4.7 million of interest. That's with, the lower interest rates. So if you're paying more, you're going to pay some more interest over that 13 or so years that we're showing if we didn't have it.
Yeah.
I think that Mr. Ottman also mentioned we did this with the public safety building in terms of issued bonds in the sort of same way. I was going to ask, are there other buildings that have been set up? And it was more so about going back to the Redevelopment Authority. I don't know why, but that, in my head, that's like new. It's not new. I heard y'all say it's not new.
No.
But in my head, it's like I don't remember us
Yeah.
going back and forth between the commission and the authority in this way.
Yeah, we did this with the public safety building, and I may be remiss, there may be one or two others, I just
Okay.
can't remember, but we certainly used it here in the city before. And it a very common mechanism for cities and towns to finance projects of this nature. Typically, you'll see this utilized with building projects, police stations, fire stations, city halls, more recently, event centers, which involve a rather large financing. And so the comparison is, if you've done any school work over the years, you've probably heard of school building corporations. And, they'll lease to the school corporation. The redevelopment authority is the school building corporation of redevelopment commissions.
Okay, I understand that. I do.
Yeah.
I do have one question, may be silly to some of you, but the interest rates, and I read the notes at the bottom, subject to change, preliminary subjects to change. Does that change that much, that often in the history, or is that pretty close, would you say?
No, that's a great
Because
question.
you're going out a long ways.
Yes, sir. So when we actually sell these bonds in early fall, late summer of this year, that interest rate will be locked in. So it will not be a variable rate unless, a bank makes a great offer or something. But no, we don't. Once we sell, that'll be a locked-in rate. So even the rates out in 2039, that's going to be set at that time. That note's just there for now. What we've done is we've looked at where interest rates at today. And we've
What I
added,
assumed.
yes, sir, yeah. So we've added a little bit of cushion into, okay, here we are today. Who knows where we are in a couple months when we actually go to sell these. So we've added a little bit of cushion to those. So that's just an estimate of where we are today, plus a little bit of room to see where things move in the next few months. But yeah, once we actually sell the obligation, it will, those will be locked in. We'll know what we're paying every year. For Jeremy and Dennis to do their budgets and things, you'll know what your payment is. So.
I just didn't want to see 4.60 in 2039 jump up to 15%.
Sure, no, right, no, it'll be locked in at that time, and obviously we'll be monitoring the market, over the next few months, and if there are, significant changes, we'll be sure to, communicate that at your upcoming meetings to say, hey, we were here, but now we're here for whatever reason, so. Yeah.
On the other hand, we have gone back and refinanced when the rates have fallen significantly enough to do it, so we have been able to take advantage of that.
Absolutely, yes, sir, yeah. So on most obligations, you'll have some term, whether the purchaser requires that be, 8 years or 5 years or 10 years, but usually with these obligations, there is an ability to refund down the road if interest rates are lower, 10 years from now versus when we're here today, or
Well,
pay them
pretty
off.
low,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, yes, sir, yeah. So, that average, I know it's kind of a range of 3.4 to 4.6, just so you know, the average comes out to around 4.25. So, just to give you a sense of kind of roughly where we are today with a little bit of cushion, yeah.
Greg, you want to talk a little bit just about the sale process?
Yeah.
That, we kind of watch the market. When we get real close to pricing, tell them about how it works, like, when, we may pump the brakes on pricing if we feel there's a spike in the market or it's not a good time, and just
Yeah.
a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll work through it with the city on how we want to go about selling these bonds. But regardless of the kind of the sale method, what Dennis Otten is referring to is that as we get closer, we'll kind of put out a notice essentially saying, hey, we're planning to bid these bonds on X date at X time. And we're constantly monitoring the market up to that point. So if we're looking and saying, okay, it's not going to be a great week to sell for whatever reason, right? Maybe supply is really high in that week, around the country, around the state there's a lot of bonds out there. We may not want to be in that mix of debt that's out there, maybe on a lesser week. We're constantly monitoring those things to try to pick the best time as much as we can. Obviously, there's a lot of risk out there that you can't control. But as far as, monitoring, as Dennis mentioned, we're constantly watching the market to make sure that, and working with an underwriter, I've chosen to make sure that we're selling at least an opportune time as best as we can. And so, as Dennis mentioned, that is a flexible thing. So if it says, hey, we could wait a week before we get that money, and we think it will be better to sell next week, we have that flexibility to do that as we progress. We're not locked into saying we have to sell August this, right now. We're not locked into that by any means, so.
I have one more question. It's kind of minor. A brief answer is fine. I don't know if it's Mr. Carson or someone else. And I will say, I appreciate that we talked about all three at one time.
Yeah.
For me, that was better, to stay in a big picture sort of way. The townhomes, did I overlook where they're going to be located and who the developer is? I don't know. I might have missed that.
Yes, that's John Carone and Greg Malakis, and it's at basically the corner of Wall and 4th Street.
Wall? What, I'm sorry.
Wall Street.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's in
Yes.
Centennial neighborhood.
Yes, 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 yes.
So they're actually looking at doing two projects. One is the townhome project, which would be 6 condominiums. And then next door to Imagination Station, doing a 4-story apartment building with about 50 units. That particular part of the project is on hold right now. They're not pursuing that right now, but they are pursuing the townhomes, the condominiums, so.
This is separate from the old pub site, right?
Yes.
This is behind Indiana
Yes.
Gas, whatever.
Yes, this is to the south of
Yeah.
that, of the pub site, exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So for us to consider supporting that project, we need to add it to the plan, so.
Thanks. Thanks to all three of y'all. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair? I would move on Resolution LRC 2026-11, move for approval.
Second.
On Resolution LRC 2026-11, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Let's see, moving on to Resolution LRC 2026-12, the reimbursement resolution.
I move approval of that resolution as well, 2026-12.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The introduction doesn't require any action, I assume.
Correct.
Moving on to Resolution LRC 2026-14.
And this is a resolution recommending designation of an economic revitalization area for tax abatement and recommending approval of a deduction for tax abatement real property, Texspan Concrete Structures LLC. Got a local company here today that's going to be making an investment in a new facility in the amount of $2.6 million, and their tenant's going to be Road Safety Services, and they're looking at pledging a minimum of 30 jobs with their average wage of $34 an hour. We do have representatives from the companies here, and they can explain more about the project and answer questions.
Hello, Commission. My name is John Mahan. Feel like a bit of a small fish now after after what we just went through. This is a site over off Wabash Avenue, over by there's a little trash facility over there. It's a former precast bridge beam facility that we purchased 25 years ago. We're bridge beam manufacturers, and it's a site that was rough, to be polite, for a while. We had a long tenant there, American Paving, Brad Pedigo, if you're familiar, and him and his uncle were there for a long time. And Brad moved on, and we said, okay, it's probably time that we make this a little bit nicer. And so, roughly 4 or 5 years ago now, we started the redevelopment through a little street and a cul-de-sac down the middle of it, and then just split up the lots. Initially, it was Sagamore Ready Mix was our primary tenant there. They subsequently were purchased by a company called Smyrna Ready Mix. That was our only real development at that site for a year or two. We then speculatively went out and built a small 10,000 square foot building with roughly 2 acres of outside storage. We found that there's kind of a need for these little bit nicer buildings that have some land. There seems to be plenty of warehouses, and it seems like there's a lot of smaller businesses that have done well and want to have a nicer facility, but you have to go outside of town to get that. Our first one was with SP Plus, who's providing the shuttles to Purdue. And our next that we're hoping will work out for us would be a build-to-suit building for a company called Road Safety Services. They're a highway striping company they have roughly 15 locations throughout the Midwest, Wisconsin. They have some in Virginia, but we'll forgive them for those. And they are not currently in Indiana. And they don't necessarily have a need to be in Lafayette. They're painting highways, fundamentally. However, Lafayette's a good location for them, centrally located. They can kind of reach Indianapolis, Chicago, and other parts of the state that work for them. And our site and what kind of our style of building kind of fits with their other properties. They like to be in a good location with a large employment population in the area. They have to have certain zoning requirements, which we fit. And so we feel confident that they're going to move forward with us, but we're kind of looking for a little help to make it easier for them to move here.
That's the old hydro conduit plant.
It
site.
is, yeah. And there's still plenty of it that sticks out of the ground in certain places, if you ever need any.
Been out there a lot of times.
Yeah.
Seen they've pre-stressed bridge beams.
Correct, that's one of our companies.
And they had if I remember right, they had a batch plant right there.
For a period, and then actually Sean Sullivan, who works for us now, he was running the plant there for Sagamore Ready Mix.
Any questions?
No, I appreciate that you explained what was going on, because that's what was my question. I didn't understand. I mean, I saw bill to suit, but there was a lot more I didn't understand, so thank you very much.
Sure,
I'm good.
I'll make a motion that we follow the director's recommendation and approve resolution LRC 2026-14.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
Good
you,
luck.
Commission.
Tax abatement compliance extensions.
Yes, we have a few tax abatement compliances to look at and approve here today. These were companies that filed for an extension on them. And we have two companies, Caterpillar and General Electric. And the first one is Caterpillar with two personal property abatements. One was granted in 2018, the other one in 2024. They have met and exceeded their pledges, so the recommendation is compliance.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to follow the director's recommendations.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And the next is General Electric, GE Aviation, and with one that was granted in 2016 and one in 2024. These are both personal property abatements, and they have exceeded their pledges as well, so recommending compliance.
Move to approve the director's recommendation to find General Electric in compliance.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That leads us to the director's report, I believe.
Yes, and we'll give you a little update on the Community Land Trust program that we've been working on for some time. That's going very well. We have a board in place. We're putting all of our policies and procedures in place as well, and plan to officially probably launch it in August or September, or early fall. We are looking at our first project already with it, and we're partnering with Habitat for Humanity, and we've put in a grant to the Federal Home Loan Bank of Indianapolis through the Affordable Home Program, asking for $500,000 to do 5 new construction homes on 5 lots. And so we have 2 lots from the city of Lafayette, 1 lot from Habitat, and 2 from Tempest Homes. Barney Schumann has donated a couple for that. So our application is being put in today, and we will find out in November, and then hopefully, if we are approved, we'll start construction of this in early spring of 2027. So in our business plan, we were not really expecting to start anything until probably a year from now, but this opportunity came up, so we're moving fast and getting things started, so.
Will those be built under the Habitat
Yes.
label, so to speak?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow, that's
Tempest Homes
exciting.
may do the ones on their lots, but we haven't quite worked that out yet, but it'll be either Habitat or Tempest Homes, yeah.
Good.
I have one question for the
Yeah.
director.
Well,
Am I mistaken? Were we starting the project on South Street from Sagamore Parkway to the post office this summer?
Well, we're hoping to, yes.
I've been looking for those roadblocks, Mr. Carson.
Well, the roadblock is called the railroad. And we are
okay.
still working with them, and it's very, very, very difficult, to say the least. They require a lot of things and different agreements and all kinds of things, and they have a whole set of procedures and policies you have to work through. And you get through all those, and they give you 20 more. So we're still working through that.
Do y'all think that it still will occur this summer between now and when the students get back, or might be delayed, which is okay?
Yeah.
I'm just, it's curiosity.
We're still working through that. We're not sure. We're looking at possibly phasing it and doing some of the work this summer and maybe doing a little bit of it later, but we're not 100% sure how we're going to do it yet. But you know, the goal was to get it done all this summer, but
Right.
again, we're being held up by the railroad right now.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you for your report.
sure.
We have this month's claims. Have we all had a chance to look at those?
There's
Yes,
no questions concerning the claims. I'll make a motion that we approve the claims totaling $817,017.72 today, June 25th, 2026.
second,
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Claims are approved. At this point, would be happy to receive comment from anyone in the audience. I'd love to hear from the public. I don't see anyone jumping up, so we will move on to, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.